What does a cardiologist have to say about the healthiest diet you can eat in order to have longevity and be healthy as you age for long-term overall health? I'm GloryB and this is GloryB-TV, a lifestyle channel for mature women who want to look fabulous, feel amazing, and age gracefully. I have Dr. Steve Lom with me today, a board-certified cardiologist. Besides talking about lifestyle diet, he will discuss evidence-based science for long-term health, what he knows about bone health, as well as other topics, such as the evidence which shows that eating acidic type foods, such as meat and dairy, lead to having an acidic body. And when your body gets too acidic, it will pull minerals from your bones. He said it, and he says there is science-based evidence to back up that claim. So it's not just me, the influencer, saying this. Let's get right to the interview. So I have Dr. Steve Lom back with me today, and he is a cardiologist and lifestyle medicine specialist. Now, he started the heartstrong.com website and the plant-based nutrition movement, which is a nonprofit, or it's pbnm.org, to start grassroots efforts to educate the public on health and nutrition, support plant-based individuals, and to actively spread the message. So welcome back, Dr. Lom. Last time we interviewed, we did it in person, but now you live in California. So I hope that's going well for you. But anybody who's in the Monterey area and wants to get to know Dr. Steve Lom and even choose him as your cardiologist, you have one right there. So it's good, so good to see you. You know, looking at the Heartstrong website and at a video, you have images of a person, like their little drawing, cartoonish, of a person going from being obese to a healthy weight. And you also had that, I saw it on a video of yours. It was in an introductory. It was one over, obese going to normal weight. And your own story is rather like that. So in your bio, you said you fell into two traps going way back now. One being the standard American diet, which is also known as SAD. You also called it the standard American lifestyle, which is a great term. And the second trap was traditional medical training, which is what all MDs and DOs go through. So your bio says after these years of medical training, long hours, stress, little activity, you weighed 250 pounds. So can you tell me, were you overweight or regular weight in high school and in undergrad?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you again so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, when I was in high school, I was pretty much a normal weight. I mean, maybe very slightly overweight, but in general, when you're young, your metabolism is fast and you're physically active. Young people can eat a lot more food and they don't gain as much weight usually. But it really caught up to me throughout my medical training. It's, very stressful, and all you do is you go there, you work so hard, and the second you get off, you're going and you're binge eating at restaurants or doing whatever, and then you start to cycle over and over again. And it was indeed two traps, because when I grew up, it was standard American diet, fast food and junk, and never exercise. My sister was 450 pounds. My parents were over 300 pounds and diabetic, and I reached probably a little more than 250 pounds. And when I went through my medical training, that second trap partially was, the two main professors that taught me were also 300 pounds and diabetic themselves as cardiologists. And nutrition was not at all a part of the curriculum. It was all pills, procedures, diagnostic tests. And it's really, kind of came to a head when my own health started falling apart. And I have 6 kids. So I was like, geez, I need to be alive and healthy for my children. And that's when I really delved into lifestyle medicine and became board certified in lifestyle medicine. And thank goodness was able to recapture my health. And it's been quite a journey, that's for sure.
Right. And that's a long time from med school, maybe when you were still single, to being married and having 6 kids. So how old were you when you reached 250 pounds?
I remember when I first started my journey in order to lose weight and get healthy, I was 34 years old, but I think, it slowly crept up. You know how it goes, 5 or 10 pounds a year times 10 years. So I'm sure I started in my 20s, with the gaining of the weight, and it just really creeps up on you. And then one day you go, "Oh my gosh, can you believe how much I weigh?" And yeah, 250 pounds.
Okay. So you maybe were a little overweight in undergrad and then it just kept going
Yeah.
from that point. Did you have high blood pressure at that time or high cholesterol?
Typical doctor male. I didn't really check, so I don't know. At one point, my LDL cholesterol was as high as 150. So it definitely was high. That was more in my early 30s. But I never really had it checked. I didn't have to check my blood pressure. You feel fine, and that's the way, young people are. I feel fine. I don't need to go see the doctor, and they don't really realize how much damage is going on the inside all those years.
Right. And your wife is a doctor, so you weren't like going, "Oh, let me take your blood pressure" to each other.
I mean, no, not really.
No, it's
No.
not that fun.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
not really.
Yeah. Now your bio continues to stay before you went whole food plant-based, before you even heard about it, when you thought, you know what, I want to do something different. You studied the USDA Dietary Guidelines. Sounds reasonable, right? You followed them strictly and you started some regular exercise and you trained for and did 2 marathons, which is amazing, but you were still overweight and you still didn't feel good.
Yeah, so I made a lot of mistakes when trying to recapture my health, like many people do. First of all, focusing on exercise. Exercise is perhaps 20% of being healthy. Diet is probably 70 to 80%. And so that was one mistake I made. Yeah, and the second was reading the USDA dietary guidelines, which is very much so politically influenced, industry influenced, and not necessarily more science-based. The Canada Food Guide is a lot more accurate. In Canada, there's one governmental organization that gives dietary guidelines and another that supports industry. In America, the USDA supports industry and gives dietary guidelines. So they can't say something like ditch dairy products because they'd be killing an industry that they're trying to support.
Right.
And in Canada, though, they completely removed dairy as a food group off. So they
Ah,
don't, yeah. So it's not a food group. You don't need to
well,
drink
it's a
your teeth out.
conflict of interest, isn't it?
It is definitely. And so I made that mistake. And even though I was eating clean, I got processed foods out, eating chicken and fish, low-fat dairy products, olive oil, and not overeating. It's still, I wasn't losing as much weight. My cholesterol numbers at that point, I was checking them and they were still kind of high. And I was like, something's missing here. I don't get it. And then
Hmm.
good old
Yeah.
Netflix,
Yeah.
sports
Well,
overnight.
keeping back to that idea, because that's what so many people do. It sounds like what you were eating is very similar to what they call the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, indeed. And
Would you say?
anytime you eliminate processed foods, you're going to make a progress, right? You're going to be
Sure.
healthier. But if
Sure.
you include too much animal-based foods or oil or high cholesterol, saturated fat containing foods, a lot of times it's not going to be great for your health. You might still have, if you have too much fat, too much calorie density, you might not lose as much weight. Your cholesterol might still be high, and you could still have some
Mhm.
inflammation going on. Now, the one thing a lot of people really lose sight of, though, is that there is a lot of what we call individual variability. Everybody's different. There's going to be a percentage of people that if they follow a Mediterranean diet or the USDA recommendations, stay physically active, don't smoke, they might be able to tolerate that. But if I had to guess the percentage, it might be only like 20%, which means
Mhm.
a large majority of people, if you follow those guidelines strictly, you're still at significant risk of heart disease, cancer risk, inflammatory disorders. And so
Mhm.
really, you want to take it to the next level. And the last thing I would like to say, though, is Mediterranean diet. Everybody thinks Mediterranean diet is so healthy. Well, the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology have a statement in their guidelines that said straight out a Mediterranean diet did not prevent heart disease in the biggest clinical trial called the PREDIMED trial, where they randomized patients to standard Mediterranean diet with nuts or Mediterranean diet with olive oil. It did prevent stroke, but the only subset of people who had a lower heart disease risk on a Mediterranean diet were those that were almost vegetarian.
Oh, so they
Yeah.
very little meat,
Yeah, they called it a pro-vegetarian Mediterranean style diet.
and
And
they were
it's
still eating dairy if they were
a little
vegetarian.
bit, and it lowered risk. That doesn't mean you couldn't lower it further if you made more aggressive
Right.
changes, but at least compared to standard American diet, a vegetarian, almost vegetarian Mediterranean diet at least lowered risk, but you could even get further reduction if
Right.
you go complete vegetarian.
Right. Well, thank you for saying that because so many people write comments on my videos saying, "Oh, but the Mediterranean diet's so great." So I
Yeah.
didn't know that piece. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. I might even look for it online and post it if I find the link, or if you find the link and
I
you
can
send
share
it
it
to
with
me.
you for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll put it in the description box and then the first comment. So then, yeah. So then in your bio, it says Netflix. When you were logged into Netflix, it suggested you watch Forks Over Knives, much like in YouTube. When you bring up YouTube, it suggests videos to you. Is that how it was?
Yeah, and it was perfect timing. That's exactly what I needed because the missing piece was really understanding. First of all, I didn't understand. I didn't know that you could be healthy on a 100% plant-based diet, a whole food vegan diet or whole food plant-based diet. You know, I thought you needed to eat animal-based foods to live, but the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the largest nutrition organization in the world, has a statement that says a 100% plant-based diet, as long as it's well balanced, enough calories, and unprocessed, is nutritionally adequate for all stages of life: infancy, childhood, pregnancy, adolescence, elderly, athletes, everybody, meaning every macronutrient and micronutrient that you need can be obtained through a whole food plant-based diet, including protein, iron, calcium, everything you need, as long as you do it right. Now, of course, if you ate only bananas all day, every day, that's not going to be good. If you ate a lot of processed stuff, that's not going to be good. If you just didn't eat enough calories, yeah, that's not good. So you gotta, eat enough calories unprocessed and keep it well balanced.
Mhm. And I think last time we talked about how old your kids were. And again, 6 kids when you all switched them as a family to
Yeah,
whole food plant-based. And I have read that children who are raised on a whole food plant-based diet don't get the ear infections that most kids get. They don't get the colds that most kids get. Have you found that to be the case?
absolutely. And that has to do mostly with dairy. And it is very well known, the ENT physicians and pediatricians, they know that if somebody has recurrent ear infections or sinus infections in adults even, that dairy is very mucus producing, and it can clog up some of those ducts and increase the risk of having those types of infections. It's even been shown to trigger asthma in kids. So eliminating dairy is definitely a good move if somebody has recurrent ear infections.
I have a friend who's a young woman. She's a fairly new mom. Her baby is about, I don't know, 10 months old, and she's been breastfeeding the baby. And he's had these bouts of eczema, even on his face, that's been horrible. And then I saw her 2 weeks ago, and the baby's face kind of really cleared up. And I said, "Oh, what happened? What are you doing differently?" And she said, "Well, she stopped eating dairy for a while."
Oh, interesting.
She stopped eating dairy, and she's like, "Oh, I miss dairy." And I'm like, "Look at
Yeah.
how great your
Well,
baby looks, though."
it makes sense.
So she started putting it together.
Yeah, we're not cows. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. That milk is baby growth food. It's designed to make a baby grow, and every species should keep to their own species milk, right? We shouldn't be drinking cow's milk, just like we shouldn't be drinking elephant milk or
Mhm.
gorilla milk, human breast milk when you're a baby, and that's all you need. That's the way we evolved. Yes, people have been eating dairy products for, a couple thousand years or so, but a lot of people are lactose intolerant. They say about 70% of the world is, especially Asian and African American cultures, and you can get all the nutrients you need in alternative ways. And so when you drink dairy, you get cholesterol, saturated fat, hormones, antibiotics, and the casein protein is very cancer cell growth promoting. So you really are better off ditching dairy. I always joke, I say, when somebody asks if they could eat dairy, I'm like, well, if you call your mom on the phone and she answers the phone, moo, okay, have some dairy, have some cow's milk. But if she doesn't, it's not for you.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So a lot of people will say, "Well, I eat the raw dairy, I drink the raw milk, I do these other kinds of dairy."
Yeah, I
What do you
mean,
say
dairy
about
is
that?
still going to have cholesterol and saturated fat, even if you get an antibiotic-free, grass-fed, whatever. It still has cholesterol and saturated fat and casein protein. And if you do it raw or unpasteurized, there's an infection risk with that. Man, There's a physician Facebook group which has 75,000 physicians in it, and somebody posed that question once about raw or unpasteurized milk, and oh my gosh, you should have seen the comments and how scared the physicians were about, especially infectious disease physicians, about how risky that really can be. So it could be dangerous. I don't think it's recommended by any healthcare organization.
Yeah, I told the young mom, I've got some recipes for you for vegan cheeses that are actually made of things like cauliflower and carrots and, things like that that are actually healthy for you. Either, cheese sauces, hard cheeses. I'm like, I'll get those to you and give them a try. And then we'll see if your baby stays clear. Then that's the answer.
Yeah, there's
Um,
definitely some great recipes out there. It's not the same, and I always tell people, don't expect it to taste exactly like dairy-based cheese or some casomorphine in dairy products, which makes you feel all comfortable and almost high on morphine. And that's not going to be in the plant-based cheeses. But there's definitely really good recipes out there.
right. Now, so you saw Forks Over Knives. You thought, wait a minute. This is amazing, right? The stories in it that they told. And the man who created Forks Over Knives, the documentary, what is his background? Do you know?
I think he's just a filmmaker and just passionate about health.
Right.
Uh,
He's not a doctor.
right,
He's
right.
a
Yeah.
filmmaker slash influencer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you got
Could
it.
be.
Yeah. And obviously he brought in a lot of medical related
Yeah.
experts, Caldwell Esselstyn and
Yeah.
T. Colin Campbell, were, the two featured physicians in Forks Over Knives. And I think what really got me about it is, I thought I was trained at a big university in Chicago. They did everything, their heart transplants, every type of surgery. And I'm like, I'm getting the best training here, right? And it didn't really occur to me throughout all my training how powerful prevention and lifestyle medicine really is. There was never had a lecture on that. Prevention to us was taking an aspirin and a cholesterol medicine and a blood pressure medicine and maybe getting people to stop smoking, but it wasn't diet. And I remember after, watching Forks Over Knives, almost becoming, angry. How did I not know that heart disease is nearly 100% preventable and even reversible through very strict changes, as shown in Dean Ornish's work? How is this not emphasized? I mean, shouldn't we as physicians be treating the cause of the person's problem? I mean, that just makes common sense to go at the root cause. And, a lot of things fight it. Culture and money are the two big things. Our culture doesn't want to change their diet. And there's a lot of money in sick people and drugs and healthcare systems and surgeries and all that. And so that's just the reality of the world we live in. But the science is science. That's the truth, that heart disease is nearly 100% preventable, despite it being America's #1 killer. We just need to have the healthcare system just needs to really step up and shift over to a lifestyle medicine
Or
model.
step aside.
Yeah.
Um, some things I've told people about you is, in cardiology, you there's money to be made in doing procedures, right?
No, no question
So
about it. Yeah, there's
yeah,
about 2.2 million coronary stents put in every year, and I don't forget the number, I don't know, 10 or
right.
$20,000 for each one, and 500,000 open heart bypass surgeries every year. And each bill for those is about $100,000. So I mean, multiple hundreds of billions of dollars.
So there's more money for a cardiologist in doing procedures than there is on he or she teaching patients real prevention that works. I mean, you can still be a billable cardiologist doing that, but it's in the procedures that the big bucks are. And you take the high road. You really do, by teaching. People can still do whatever they want, but right? You can
Yeah,
lead
no, yeah,
horses to water, you can't make them drink.
yeah, no, absolutely. The lowest paid doctor in the United States is either a preventative medicine doctor or a pediatrician. That kind of goes back and forth. The highest paid is a plastic surgeon. That's America for you, that you can see where our emphasis is. But no, it's very true. We actually get paid more money if our patient is sick and
Yeah.
gets admitted to the hospital and needs surgeries and procedures and more doctor's visits, when really we should get paid more money to keep our patients healthy, keep them out of the hospital, get them off medications. That's really the model that we need, and it is shifting that way. We have no choice. The
Yeah.
healthcare system is going to be in crisis mode in
Mhm.
5 or 10 years, and so they see it and they're trying to
Yeah.
shift it. It's just way
A
too
lot of
slow.
that is patient driven, I think, and then a combination of doctors like you which you're all getting to know each other. So, but you're in the minority as far as doctors are concerned. But a lot of it, I think, is patient driven. And because we have the internet now and it's not 1975 or we're just limited to magazines and books. So there's a
Yeah.
lot more. So I have another question for you. From the time you started eating that whole food plant-based diet to the time you were at the 170 pounds, how much time was that? How many months?
Oh, maybe at most 6 months. So I had already
Oh,
lost a little bit of weight by, again, cutting out processed foods and running and exercising. And so I probably, what was I, when I finished my first marathon, I was probably 190 pounds. So I had lost weight just through sheer, reducing calories, even though it wasn't the proper dietary content and exercising. But again, I was still technically overweight. For my height, my BMI was still 26 or 27. I didn't feel well. My cholesterol was high. Changing to whole food plant-based and keeping it very low in fat, 6 months and boom, it may even been less than that. I was at my ideal body weight for the first time in my adult life. And I'm still there today, thank
wow.
goodness. Yeah.
6 months is pretty short, I think.
Yeah.
I
So
tell
within,
people give it a year.
yeah, so 6 months, I went from about 190 to 170. So 20 pounds and
Yeah.
six.
And feeling good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
maybe getting sick less often, colds and stuff.
And my LDL cholesterol dropped to 47 without medication. Can you believe that?
Well, I think mine's around that.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
I'm 64. So yeah, coming from the family I come from and everything. So let's go back to your medical training. So while you were in med school and then the further training to become a cardiologist, how much training did you receive in any bit? I mean, 2 minutes ago you said none in nutrition,
Yeah.
but did you
Yeah.
get any training in nutrition, or was it the general USDA kind of nutrition?
It wasn't even that. No.
Oh,
So it
it
was
wasn't even that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
4 years of medical school, 3 years of medicine residency, 3 years of cardiology fellowship. I had no training in any nutrition except in medical school, you learn about like vitamin deficiencies, like kwashiorkor and beriberi and these weird vitamin deficiencies that happen in malnourished
Okay.
countries.
So
That was
even at Midwestern, because I'm familiar with Midwestern University where you did your med school, the
yeah,
initial med school.
yeah,
I dated a guy in the early 90s who went there. So,
yeah.
I know they do a lot more training than where you're going to get an MD at that school, you get a DO, but not
Uh-huh.
even there.
Nope, not even there. No, I had it was all just the vitamin deficiencies, and that was part of our biochemistry curriculum. Yeah, that was all I had.
Wow.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm sure
Yeah.
hopefully things have changed. There's a lot more awareness nowadays, and they've asked me to come back to the university to speak to students about cardiology and lifestyle medicine. And so they're getting a little
Okay.
bit, I know for sure at this point. So
Yeah. Good. So I didn't realize until I read it yesterday in your bio that you spent some of your career, internship, residency, and fellowship at Loyola. That was new news.
yeah.
Now, while you were there, did you ever meet Dr. Jim Judge? Does that ring a bell?
So I was at Loyola University Medical Center from 2004 to 2010, 3 years of residency and 3 years of fellowship. I recognize the name Jim Judge, but
Okay.
yeah,
Well, he was my primary care physician for a while till he retired.
okay.
And he's the only doctor who ever said to me the following words, quote, "There is so much we don't know." And by we, he meant doctors. And he's the only doctor who ever admitted to me that he didn't know everything about medicine, nutrition, treatments, and the human body. Yeah, many doctors think they know everything, even about nutrition. And a few times a week, I need to remind people who write these comments on my videos that they are the boss of themselves. Their doctor isn't their boss. I have to remind them that. And I have to remind them their doctor doesn't know everything, but people still put doctors on a pedestal where they really don't belong. So have you seen this phenomenon where people put other doctors and what other doctors told them about nutrition on such this high plane that it's difficult to convince those patients, then regular folks like me, that a whole food plant-based diet will get them well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So whenever a doctor gives a dietary recommendation, you always got to ask, well, what formal training did you have in nutrition in addition to your regular medical training? And almost all the time, it's going to be none. And so you really shouldn't take advice from a physician unless they have some sort of certification in either, lifestyle medicine or obesity medicine or something like that that incorporates nutrition into it. And so correct that if you're told one thing, it may not necessarily be accurate. What we really always have to go back to is recommendations from major organizations, American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, American Cancer Society. All of them have the same message: processed foods eliminated, animal foods dramatically reduced, and even eliminated if you'd like to go that far, depending on the individual, and then focusing on whole, unprocessed, plant-based for at least 90% of your calories, and potentially more than that. So, and it's just like what your physician might tell you may not be right. The misinformation on the internet is all over the place. People are always trying to sell their book or get clicks on their videos or sell their supplement. And it's horrible. And so don't ever get hoodwinked by those things. Go by the major organizations. These people, these organizations have physicians who have dedicated their life to this topic. They're not allowed to take a penny from industry or they get kicked off these panels. And I know a handful of them, they're so afraid to even get a free lunch because they'll get kicked off the panels for writing guidelines for whatever heart disease or hypertension or weight loss. And so these guidelines are very much evidence-based, and it's the best that we have. And anytime somebody tries to say, oh, things like LDL cholesterol doesn't matter, or oh, you can eat all the red meat you want, or whatever like that, that's not what the science shows. So always go back to the major organizations is my recommendation.
Now, don't you think though, with those organizations, that there are doctors connected with them who aren't promoting a lifestyle diet like you and your wife eat?
Not really, no. So
Good.
I'm on the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology's nutrition work group. There's about
Okay.
50 physicians on that work group, and I would say probably at least 40 are 100% whole food plant-based,
Mm.
and the other 10 are mostly plant-based. They might be, more, pro-vegetarian Mediterranean style diet. And so, as part of that organization, they know what the science shows, and the past president of the American College of Cardiology, Kim Williams, who I think you might
Oh,
know,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, when he got elected president of the American College of Cardiology, you could argue he was the most powerful, renowned cardiologist in the country or world at the time. During his acceptance speech, he said there are two types of cardiologists: those who recommend a whole food plant-based diet and those who have not yet read the research.
Right.
Uh, and he kept on going to say that if you're a cardiologist, understanding that if a whole food plant-based diet is essentially a cure for heart disease, and if you're a cardiologist and don't tell your patient about the cure for their disease, that's medical malpractice. You cannot withhold a cure from your patient. It needs to be emphasized the cause of heart disease is lifestyle related. The treatment needs to be lifestyle related. And the medicines only reduce risk by a percentage. You got to treat the cause of the problem.
That's coming a long way. I was thinking yesterday about, and I'm glad that some people are talking about this now, but I remember looking at some old magazines in the stacks when I was in college and just going through them from the 50s and the early 60s, and there'd be ads for cigarettes with a doctor or someone playing a doctor where the doctor's saying cigarette smoking is great for your health.
Yeah. And
That's
so
because the tobacco industry held so much power back then.
they did a lot of things. They published research in major medical journals, they funded studies to show that tobacco wasn't that bad for you. And they confused the public. They did a lot of different things. But again, in the end of the day, the science is clear. And eventually, enough science accumulates saying tobacco is bad for you. Surgeon General's warning, 1964, people finally listened. In the hospitals, doctors used to smoke cigarettes. They used to give them to patients. I had a patient show me the burn wound from where the cardiologist dropped the cigarette on him during surgery and burned him. The cardiologist was smoking during a procedure, right? And this is the way it used to be. Now, of course, now you can't smoke in the hospitals. People get the smoking thing, but fast forward, It's now processed foods and animal-based foods is all over the place in the hospital, given to patients in the cafeteria, the vending machines, and doctors' conferences. I remember my journal club as a fellow was pepperoni pizza, soda pop, and potato chips, and that's what they fed us. It was crazy. And so
Right.
there is a law now in California and New York saying that hospitals should not have processed meats and sugar drinks in their hospital, and they should be completely removed. And it's not really enforced very well, but it is technically state law, and I think it's coming to other states too.
Interesting. And again, going back then, coming to now, it's where the money is and who has the power. And
And it's culture
it's a
too.
big ship. Yeah, it's culture. It's a big ship to turn around.
Yeah, we love the taste of, sugar, salt, and fats. And it's harder to be perfect with the diet, but the more you do it, the more you like the food and the easier it gets. It just takes that
Right.
effort, which a lot of people don't want to make.
It's what Dr. Alan Goldhammer calls the pleasure trap. So you talked about traps. He talks about the pleasure trap
Yeah.
and food having huge traps that we fall into. So I saw you posted a video to your YouTube channel in September of 2023, and it was called Keto Kills. And you proved it in the video. I love that video. So meanwhile, back in 2019, when you and I met and we did 3 videos together, one of those was about the keto diet and how it's actually harmful for the human body. And as you predicted at the time, the trolls came out to that video.
Hmm.
And we're going on and on in the comments about, oh, but I lost weight on the keto video or on the keto diet. And I thought, did you not listen to Dr. Lome? That's what he said will happen. You
Yeah.
will lose weight, but you're not healthy. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of what you were saying. So everything isn't about weight loss. The good thing is on the whole food plant-based diet, weight loss is a bonus. You know what another bonus is of the this diet, the whole food plant-based diet? Looking younger. I
Yeah.
show up at reunions and they're like, why do you look so young? I did Botox once, it wore off way long ago. It wore off 9 months ago. I did it for, YouTube and see what it was like. It was great. But other than that, it's my diet, a little bit my skincare, but it's mostly my diet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you could do a lot of different crazy fad type diets, including keto, and lose weight. That doesn't mean you're going to be healthy in the long term. Anytime you eliminate processed foods, people will lose weight. And, you could also lose weight becoming a cocaine addict or getting chemotherapy. That doesn't mean that's good for your long-term health to do that for the rest of your life, right? And so
Right.
what you really do is change your diet, change your lifestyle to what it will promote health and longevity and also help you lose weight. And that's what a whole food plant-based diet can do for you for sure.
Right. And it's not, we no longer call it vegan because so many people were eating a vegan diet and just eliminating animal foods, but then they had all these other things they were eating, processed foods and
Mhm.
all kinds of things that technically are vegan, but they aren't good for long-term health. So,
Very true. Yeah, you
yeah,
technically be a vegan and eat Oreo cookies, cotton candy, and drink beer all day, and you're vegan,
yeah,
and that's definitely not going to be good for your health. And so, if you wanted to say whole food vegan, okay, that would be fine because that means you're eating unprocessed vegan or whole food plant-based is the better terminology for sure.
right, right. I also watched your video on sweet potatoes. I love that. They're great to eat as long as you don't add the butter and the fat. And I love you
Yes.
showed the Thanksgiving sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows on top. And I was like,
Oh yeah, I mean it
I don't
tastes
mean this kind of sweet potato. I
Yeah,
mean,
there were two
you
blue
know,
zones that ate predominantly sweet potatoes, the Okinawans and the Papua New Guinea Highlanders, which were 90% sweet potatoes in their diet, but there was one ingredient, sweet potatoes. That was it. And they were some of the longest living cultures that have ever been described. And so
yeah,
just don't add the fat to the sweet potatoes and go crazy.
right. And I like them roasted. I'll even roast them, let them cool, then I'll dice them and put them in a salad. But then you were showing all kinds of examples of ways
Yeah.
to spice them up, let's call it that. And I even forgot you had the ones where they're sliced and then you roast them either in the oven, you said, or the toaster oven, and then you
Toaster.
use them as like instead
Yeah.
of a chip,
Yeah. So I actually
kind
put
of,
it in the toaster. Yeah. On a
oh
regular,
my
I just
gosh.
use
Oh, you put
bread.
them in the
Yeah.
toaster.
Yeah, I'm lazy. I do that sometimes, and then the other thing I do is I sometimes microwave the sweet potato for 8 minutes, and then
Not
it's
the
cooked
whole
right
thing,
there.
right? Because you
Yeah,
don't
it's
have
that
time to wait
easy.
an hour.
Yeah, and then just throw some black bean salsa and a little bit of
Oh,
guacamole
yeah.
on it, and you got yourself a great meal, real easy.
They're so good. They're
Yeah.
so tasty. Yeah, I like them. They're so delicious. So last fall, I had a cardiac calcium CT score scan done. Now, you might be like, okay, why would you have that done? Well, the reason was because I take a calcium supplement. I do
Mhm.
take an algae-based calcium supplement, but still many of my viewers on my videos where we talk about osteoporosis and we talk about taking certain kinds of calcium supplements express fear in the comments because they've heard that taking calcium supplements can lead to, I got to say this right, atherosclerosis, right? So I thought, okay, I've been taking calcium for a few years now. I'll have the cardiac calcium CT score scan. So I'm 64 years old. It cost me $75, and my score was a big fat 0.
Good for you. That's great. You know,
Yeah.
what the research shows is high calcium diets or calcium supplements does increase the risk of calcification, but does not increase the risk of heart attack or death. We know there's two types of plaque that can build up in the arteries, a soft plaque, which is more cholesterol based, and the hard plaque, which is more calcium based. Hard plaque is much less likely to trigger a heart attack than a soft plaque, which is more aimed
Mhm.
and vulnerable to what we call rupturing or thrombosing. So even if calcium supplements have been shown to increase calcification of the arteries, it's not linked to having a heart attack or having any negative outcomes. But calcium scores are a great tool, especially if somebody has an intermediate risk for heart disease and no symptoms. It can help you to really see what your risk is and maybe motivate you to get healthier if you do have an abnormal score. I recently met two individuals who wish they would have had coronary calcium scores, who were running in the Monterey Bay half marathon, and they thought they were healthy. This was November 22. And they had family history. They didn't eat healthy, slightly high cholesterol, and they both had cardiac arrest and literally died on the race course at mile 3. Greg collapsed in front of me, had to do CPR and shock him at the finish line. Michael went down, cardiac arrest, had to shock him and get him back. They both would have died had we not done that. They both had widowmaker blockages. And they found out they had a lot of calcification. They didn't know about it, right? And had they known about that, they certainly would have, I'm sure, changed their diet, but gotten proper treatment and been more aware. Hopefully that wouldn't have happened. But it was crazy that two runners had cardiac arrest right in front of me in both races. And you know what? Both of them now are on 100% whole food, plant-based diet. Can you believe that?
Yes, you convince them because you're the doctor who saved their lives. Now, did you have the defibrillator? Did somebody run over with that?
So
It was
yeah, mile
nearby?
3 was in an awkward part of the course. They had to call 911 and an ambulance had to come. But once we hooked him up, that took about 5 minutes. The rhythm was ventricular fibrillation, which is a fatal arrhythmia unless you shock the person. That's what DeMar Hamlin, the football player, had when he collapsed on the football field. And so and then after the finish line, the medical tent happens to be right after the finish line. So a race volunteer brought a defibrillator over really quick within like just a minute of Michael going down. So thank goodness. Wow. Crazy, crazy.
Wow. But the right doctor saved their lives and helped them change their diet instead of them going, "Oh, I'll go on the Mediterranean diet now."
Yeah,
So
it's crazy how that happened because like it happened to a lifestyle medicine nutrition focused doctor too. It's like now I can kind of tell the story when I'm talking to my patients and I say, yeah, exercise is important, but it's 20%. Eating
they
healthy
were
is
exercising. They were in a
yeah,
marathon.
yeah.
That's marathons are like way up here. I mean, that's huge.
And it's
And it
really
still
given me
wasn't enough.
a platform to really spread this whole plant-based message. You know, we were on the Today Show. It was written up in Washington Post, New York Times, all these places. And when they came back 1 year later, which was just a couple months ago, can you believe this? How strong does it, of a person does it take? They came back a year later, said, I know I died and had a cardiac arrest during this race. I'm going to come back and do it again anyways the next year. And they did. We stuck together, the three of us, ran the full half marathon. It was nice and smooth. It was emotional, and wow! And it just shows you the power of a plant-based diet. You know, after having a coronary stent, Michael had multiple stents, and having gone through what they did, both technically having heart attacks, they changed their diet. They come back, they could still run a half marathon and do great.
Now, Was this past November 2023?
That's when they came
Okay.
back. Uh-huh.
Okay. And is there some video on that
Oh
somewhere?
yeah. We were on NBC Nightly News. There was lots of
Okay.
places.
Oh, I
But
have to look that up.
Yeah, I should really put something on my YouTube channel
Yeah.
emphasizing that whole reunion. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, the other thing that I sent you were some of the comments from some of my viewers. I blurred out their names, so this is all anonymous. But I thought you might like to have some fun addressing a few of them as you
Sure.
see fit. So you go ahead and choose. And I'll end up putting them on the screen when I edit the video so people can see.
Sure. I think the first one was something like there's nothing more nutritious or nutrient dense than fatty red meat.
Yep, that's
And
what
you
it
know,
says.
And so when we think about nutrition, the most important thing that we have to do is think about the whole food, the whole package. We can't just say, oh, this has a lot of iron in it or a lot of protein in it. It must be good for you, right? What else what other baggage does it carry with it? And red meat is very high in saturated fat and dietary cholesterol, of course, not to mention something we call heme iron. There's two different types of iron, the heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron, which is animal protein based, is very much so increases the risk of heart disease and cancer, whereas plant-based iron is non-heme iron and does not increase that risk. So there have been, whether or not there's a lot of iron and protein in red meat, it is strongly linked to heart disease and strongly linked to cancer, actually being classified as a class 1 carcinogen, or according to the World Health Organization. Processed meats are class 1 carcinogen according to the World Health Organization, and mostly colon cancer risk, but also breast cancer risk and yeah, heart disease and stroke. So it's fine to have a food that has a lot of nutrients in it, but what about the risk for your health, and what about all the other baggage that comes with it? Another similar thing to red meat is fish. And yes, processed meat's the worst protein source. Red meat is the second worst for your health. White meat is a little bit better, but still not necessarily great health-wise. And then on the spectrum of protein sources for your health, fish would be the next healthiest one. Yes, it has omega-3s in it, but it still has cholesterol, saturated fat, dioxins, plastics, mercury, all these things. And when I have somebody says to me, I eat fish for omega-3s, that's like saying I'm eating a Snickers bar to get peanuts. Sure, you can get peanuts from a Snickers bar, but you get all this other baggage that comes with it, right? So you can get omega-3s from chia seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, other plant-based foods. You don't need
Flax
to.
seeds. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So you got to think about the whole food. So that was a
right,
comment to reply to here. So.
right. Okay. Were there any other of these comments that I sent you that
Well,
you
I
thought?
know that there was a lot of them that were talking about bone health.
Yeah.
And, I don't have patients coming to me specifically for bone health as a cardiologist, but I'm, board certified in internal medicine and lifestyle medicine and attended numerous conferences. So the general thought from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine in regards to bone health is that you can be fine with bone health on a whole food plant-based diet, that calcium is easy to get on a whole food plant-based diet. It's, calcium, a lot of times people associate with dairy products. Well, dairy products are fortified with calcium. It's not natural from the cow. Some people call it calcium. It's like, no, it's not from the cow. And so, plant-based milks have 50% more calcium than dairy. And a lot of times the high acidity of animal-based proteins actually leaches calcium from your bone as a buffer. And so there's a lot of data that shows the highest dairy consumption countries have the highest risk of osteoporosis. And
And about that, I've said that, and I've pointed to articles and studies that point that out. And then some people have been challenging me saying, no, if you eat that way, if you have the acidic, it's not going to leach calcium or anything else from your bones. But you just
well,
said it
again,
can.
that's not what the science shows. And again, Canada removed dairy from its food guide, right? So they're an unbiased, nutrition authority. The American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics says a 100% plant-based diet is nutritionally adequate for all stages of life. There's another big resource there. And the way I think about bone health is just like, similar to protein. If you eat a whole bunch of protein, are you going to build muscle and be some ripped huge bodybuilder type guy? Well, no, not unless you do a lot of resistance training and weightlifting and stress your muscles. Well, it's the same thing with bone health. If you eat a whole bunch of calcium, you are not going to get strong bones unless you do weight-bearing exercises and stress your bones enough to tell them to build and be strong. And so it's a combination of both adequate calcium intake and weight-bearing exercises that you need to do. And sure, if you don't lift weights but eat a lot of protein, maybe you'll get a little less muscle loss compared to somebody who was on a protein deficient diet. And so similarly, maybe if you overwhelm yourself with way too much calcium, and if you don't do weight-bearing exercises, maybe you won't leach as much calcium from your bone, but that's not the proper approach. The proper approach is weight-bearing exercises and get enough calcium in your diet, which you can get from, vegetables, whole grains, green leafy vegetables are very high in calcium. Again, if you just eat adequate calories, well-balanced and unprocessed, you'll get all the calcium you need in your diet. And if you really are worried about it, add a little bit of, whatever, almond milk, or I use flax milk because it gives me my omega-3s, and it's only 25 calories a cup. And then also it has, extra calcium in it. Easy.
Do you make the flax milk or do you buy it?
I've made it before, but again, I'm a little lazy. So I do buy it. There's a company called Good Karma that sells an unsweetened flax milk. There's another one with added protein in it. I don't get that one. I get the unsweetened from Good Karma. 25 calories a cup.
Yeah.
All your omega-3s you need and high in calcium.
Okay. I've made sesame seed milk before too. I don't like the taste.
Yeah, I've never
But
tried.
I've read some really interesting, it's more anecdotal, but about there was a young man who was in a family that was whole food plant-based, and he went skiing. He was about 20 years old. He went skiing, broke a clavicle or something, and they made the sesame seed milks, but he drank more of it than he normally would. And when he went back for the checkup, the doctor couldn't believe how well his bones were healing and how fast.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, it was maybe 4 or 6 weeks later after it was set. But just the bones were just like, let's get to work. And they were just more advanced. The doctor didn't expect to see the bones doing that well for another few more weeks or so.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So you agree that the body can leach calcium and maybe some other minerals from the bones in certain conditions.
When you're eating a very, very high animal-based protein, high dairy diet, yes, because animal-based amino acids are very acidic. They're more sulfur containing, especially eggs. And so they're called amino acids, right? That's what they are. And protein is made up of amino acids. So when you eat a high protein diet, especially animal-based protein, how is your body going to buffer it? Calcium phosphate from the bone. And so you really don't want to eat a super high protein diet. And the protein you get, you want to have the less acidic, less sulfur containing amino acids, which is more plant-based protein. And there's so much data, actually 4 huge clinical trials published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, showing that removing animal-based protein from your diet, substituting plant-based protein, lowers overall mortality dramatically, with the biggest association being processed meats. And then second is red meats, and then even white meat and even fish, and definitely eggs. If you remove them and had plant-based protein, mortality goes down. And that's really what we want, is longevity. We want to live long. So mortality is the most important endpoint.
Right.
When people fall and break their hip, I don't know the exact numbers, again, not my area of expertise, but I've heard things like at 1 year, 50% of people have passed away after a hip fracture when they're elderly, because things really start to fall apart. And that's a marker that if you break your hip when you fall, then in general, you're just not in good health. Yeah.
Right. I know. I've increased, and I put exercises on my channel that help to keep from falling. I already have bad feet, right? I've had spinal stenosis at L4, L5 in the spine. So I'm very conscious about falling. And I also did a video after I moved. All of a sudden, I was outside one day and this loose, big German Shepherd showed up that was obviously a puppy, and it knocked me down. It was the first time I'd fallen in a long time. But in 2017, I fell 4 times. So I'm like, okay, I got to do the core, and I haven't fallen since. And I've noticed I've stopped myself from falling sometimes, and that's what we want. And as you say, we want longevity, but during those years, we want to be healthy, right? I don't want to live a long time and being sick either.
Yeah, and
We want to be
that's a
healthy with the longevity.
And that's the criticism of our healthcare system. They call it a healthcare system, when really the definition of the word health is the state of being free from illness and injury, free from it, healthy. We don't keep people healthy. We just give people more medications and maintain chronic disease. We don't cure the diabetes or the high blood pressure or the heart disease. We maintain it, suppress it with medicines, lower the risk a little bit, but never make the person truly healthy. So lifestyle medicine physicians usually say we shouldn't call it a healthcare system. We should call it a medical care system. You get medical care, but it's not necessarily what's going to make you healthy, which is more the lifestyle medicine and eating
Right.
healthy.
You know what else is amazing? I did some research last week or the week before, just looking at the CDC. Well, they had the best data. So I was looking at how many people die per year from heart disease, how
Mhm.
many people die a year from cancer. And it was right there. I mean, they're not up to date. That's not surprising. So for one of them, the latest data they had was 2021. For the other, the latest data they had was 2020. It was still, big numbers in the 600,000 some odd in the US. Then I
Yeah.
looked at number of deaths from osteoporosis, number of deaths from, other things related to osteoporosis, which would be, right, falling, deaths from breaking a bone. They don't even have data on that. I mean, we know people, like you just said, people do die after a fall and breaking a bone, but it's so small they don't even report it.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people fall, break their hip, but then they develop pneumonia afterwards, or something else happens. And so pneumonia gets put on. But
Right,
really, they became more debilitated, more prone to all these illnesses because now they're not
right,
walking, they're bed bound, and they
right.
have another. Mhm.
So
Yes.
my concern is a lot of my viewers choose their diet based on someone tells them something about an osteoporosis diet that's good for them. But I know from what they're saying to eat, it's going to cause heart disease and cancer and strokes
Yeah.
and type 2 diabetes. And I'm
Very,
like,
yeah, very true. Number
you're
one
much
cause.
more likely to die of heart disease. We
Yes,
all are.
number one cause of death every year since 1919 has been heart disease. 1918 was Spanish flu. Every year since then, it's been heart disease number one, and cancer number two. And this diet's the same for both. It's a plant-based diet. That's what the American Cancer Society and the American Cancer Research Institute both advocate.
Right. So if you do that diet and you get healthier and you feel better, you're going to be okay with doing the exercises, the
Yeah,
resistance training, the weightlifting, depending on some of my viewers say, well, I can't do the jumping and the stomping and all that kind of thing because I got a knee thing or I got a foot thing. Okay. Well, there are a lot of other things you can do that are
yeah,
resistance oriented, wearing a weighted vest when you do walk, all kinds of things that can still tell the body, hey, you got some weight resistance, you got some other kinds of resistance going on here without the jumping that's still going to build bone.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to add?
Just say that the power is yours. You have the most power over your own health destiny. It's just
Mm-hmm.
navigating all the misinformation and trying to overcome unhealthy lifestyle habits and fight against our culture and food system, which really are not promoting the proper things in regards to health. If you just look at America, 80% of people are overweight and half of adult Americans are pre-diabetic or diabetic, and those numbers are getting worse. Take power into your own hands and get yourself healthy. And I always love to end presentations and such with saying straight out, even if you're not a doctor or in the healthcare industry, you personally can save people's lives if you just understand the power of lifestyle medicine and plant-based diets and try to help spread that message and help other people change their diet. There's a wonderful book called How Not to Die.
Oh,
And it
Michael
goes into that.
Greger,
Yeah,
right?
it goes into
Michael
that in great
Greger.
detail. Yeah. I mean, even if you just read the first two or three chapters of that book, it's so powerful. It says it all absolutely perfectly, very eloquently written. So you can save other people's lives. So get yourself healthy first. But then as you learn about lifestyle medicine, plant-based diets, read How Not to Die. and spread that message. I bought that book for my mother for her birthday a few years ago. She thought it was so cute. She's like, "Oh, my son doesn't want me to die. How nice is that?" "Oh, fine, honey. I'll read the book for you." And guess what? She read it, lost more than 100 pounds, reversed her diabetes. She has no osteoporosis. She's doing great, and she's in her mid 80s. So,
In her mid 80s.
yep,
And she had already seen that you had made significant changes.
absolutely, yep.
And it took the Michael Greger book for her to, I don't know,
I
have the
mean,
aha moment.
a lot of times family members don't listen to their other family members, but they'll listen to other people. So
Really?
yeah, so have them read something like that, and that's powerful. It's a great birthday present for somebody, or holiday gift, or whatever it
Yeah.
takes. Yep,
It's a biblical saying, a prophet isn't accepted in his own hometown.
that's true. Yep.
That meant, your family included. So, well, I'm glad your sister listened to you, and your wife wanted to join in and you got all the kids on board. So that's
Yep.
amazing because,
Yeah.
how old was your oldest when you and your wife said, okay, we're going to do this as a family?
So I think she was 9.
Okay, that's still pretty young. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think she was 9. Our last 2
Okay.
kids were conceived, born and raised 100% whole food plant-based. They're doing great. They're now 7 and 5 years old. No health issues whatsoever. Growing fine, thriving. They're actually taller than average for their age, even though my wife is only 5 foot tall. They're still greater than 50th percentile for height, even though they're 100% plant-based. So there's no concern about growth there. And they don't know any difference. And now, when they see somebody eating meat or something, they're like, "That was a pig, that was a chicken." And they get so sad, and they just don't, like, why would you eat that? That poor animal.
Yeah.
The kids understand that it's a inherent compassion that humans have.
Yeah.
We're taught
Right.
to kill the animals.
So they're that way about meat, but how are they with like sweets and candy and
Yeah, so
cake?
that's hard, right? So
Yeah.
in that regard, all of our kids aren't perfect because their friends
Yeah.
are, having potato chips and stuff like that.
Mhm.
We do the best we can to lead by example, have the healthy food in the house, don't have the unhealthy food out of the house when they go out. It's going to happen. They're not going to be perfect. And it is what it is as long as they understand their choices. We're trying to give them the tools so that when they do go off to college eventually, because you know how everybody gains weight in college, that at least they understand the concepts and they don't, gain 50 pounds like, a lot of people do when they leave their house. So
Right. Oh, that's amazing. I love that story.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now you're in California where there's even more abundance of fresh fruit and vegetables more times of the year that are nearby,
Yeah,
right?
it's great. Yeah, we're very lucky out here.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to link in the description box and in the first comment below to both of your websites. And, we might even email a couple things. I might ask you, hey, will you send me links to this, this, and this that you
Sure.
mentioned? And
Yeah.
then I'll pop those in there as well. Thank you so much. I
No,
appreciate it.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me for sure.
Yeah. And we'll
Yeah.
talk to you again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Tap one of the images on the right side of the screen, and I'll see you in the next video.